Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. AR-15 pistol, rifle, or SBR. Which one makes the most sense for you? Well, today we are going to attempt to navigate the ATF's completely ridiculous rules on barrel length and why you might want a pistol, a rifle, or an SBR, and what pros and cons you get with each. So if that sounds good to you guys, well, then let's get started. The reason we need to make this video is because of the completely arbitrary laws about barrel length that were created with the National Firearms Act many years ago. And we've had to deal with them ever since. And I'm not going to go into the full history of the NFA, but I do want to explain this to people because many people don't realize that you can get AR rifles and pistols, well, until they start looking into maybe getting an AR and they wonder, what the hell is an AR pistol? It looks like a rifle. And it does look more like a rifle than a handgun, that's for sure. And so we're going to kind of explain a little bit of that today. But the first one I want to talk about is rifles, because that is the most traditional, the most standard, and what you're going to mostly see on the market, especially if you're looking for like an entry-level AR. Now, what makes a rifle specifically is that it has a barrel length of at least 16 inches. That is that arbitrary barrel length I was talking about that they decided made something a rifle. Now, without going into the whole history of the NFA, originally they said it was 18 inches to be a rifle, but then there was a bunch of M1 carbines, I believe, that the government decided to sell, fire sale to civilians that had less than an 18-inch barrel length. And after they sold them, they realized that they had violated the NFA. And so instead of making everyone that the government sold guns to into felons, well, they changed that arbitrary barrel length to 16 inches. So this right here, this is actually my only AR that has a 16-inch barrel. This was my first AR. So of course, it was before I knew that there were AR pistols or anything of the such. It's a rifle, 16-inch barrel. Now with a 16-inch barrel, being that it is a rifle, you can pretty much set it up however you want, as long as you don't, drill that third hole. Meaning that you can put a stock on it and you can put a vertical foregrip on it. And whatever other accessories that you want. I mean, I've got a big, long-range scope on this one right now. And the reason why is because it's my longest AR, and so it's the one I shoot greater distances with. You get more velocity out of a longer barrel length, which can help when you're trying to shoot greater distances. Bullet goes faster, it drops less at those greater distances. And so that's one of the big pros of having a 16-inch or longer barrel. If you're going for like a DMR or like a sniper rifle kind of setup, you might want an 18-inch or a 20-inch barrel. When I put together a 308 or a 6.5 Creedmoor, I might do a longer than 16-inch barrel. I might not. I like short guns, and we're going to get into that with the other ones. But rifle, 16-inch barrel, and being that it is a rifle, according to the ATF, well, that means that it is meant to be fired from the shoulder with two hands. And so that's why you are pretty much expected to have a stock, and you can have whatever kind of foregrip you want, vertical, angled, anything, and we will talk about all those as we get into the other ones. So, rifle is very simple. 16-inch or longer barrel makes it a legal rifle, and then you can legally put a stock on it. You can legally put a vertical foregrip on it. You do get more velocity out of a longer barrel length, but it is going to be a little bit less maneuverable. This rifle is just not as easy to wield as some of my shorter ones, which we're going to get into right now. The first slightly shorter one we're going to talk about is this, because it's an example also of a rifle. This one only has a 14.5-inch barrel. Well, I just said that it had to be 16 inches to be a legal rifle, right? So how does that work? Well, the muzzle device is pinned and welded to the barrel. I don't know if you could see the weld there. The guy that did it is a good friend of mine. He did a pretty good job, so, it's painted black. But there is a specific way that you have to pin and weld it, And then, according to the ATF, the muzzle device is permanent and it becomes part of your barrel length. So you can have a 13.9, even a 13.7 inch barrel with certain muzzle devices. I went with a 14.5 because I wanted to use a 13.5 inch Geisley handguard and still have room for a suppressor. Now, I probably could have gone 13.9 and had my suppressor, another half inch farther back. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is that you can still have a legal rifle if you can pin and weld your muzzle device to make your barrel length 16 inches, that legal minimum that makes it a rifle. So by pin and welding that, I did not have to deal with the NFA, anything else. Didn't have to get a tax stamp for this gun. I could still put a stock on it, vertical foregrip. Now this is an emissary handbrake. I don't think this counts as a vertical foregrip, so I think you could put this on a pistol if you want, but if I wanted a vertical foregrip, I could put one on this. So we're only going to touch on this for a minute, but there are certain barrel lengths that if you have a muzzle device that makes it over 16 inches, you can pin and weld it, and you still have a legal rifle, and you don't have to worry about the laws of pistols and SBRs. Next, I want to talk about AR pistols, and this is not an AR pistol. This is a registered SBR, but when I bought it, it was an AR pistol, and you can do that. You can turn a pistol into a short-barreled rifle if you want. Now, when I bought it, this had a pistol brace on it. Now, that's the thing. So this has an 11.5 inch barrel, less than that legally required 16 inches to be considered a rifle. I think these classifications are pretty ridiculous because no one, except for the ATF, would consider this a pistol, right? It doesn't look like a pistol, it looks like a rifle, but it is considered a pistol. Well, this one is not anymore, but it was considered a pistol. Now, if you have a barrel length shorter than 16 inches, you can use a pistol brace. Now, this might look like a stock, but it's not. The thing about a pistol brace, for one thing, it's kind of flimsy. It's not meant to be a stock, really, although many people do use them in the same manner. It has this Velcro on it, and you're meant to put your arm through here so that you can fire it one-handed, because according to the ATF, a pistol is a firearm that is meant to be fired with one hand, even though we all shoot pistols with two hands. But the ATF logic and real human being logic is not the same thing. So you can have a pistol brace on a shorter barrel length than 16 inches, and it's totally legal. You cannot have a vertical foregrip. What you can do is an angled foregrip like this. Now, this is from something I had a long time ago. I don't use anymore, but it's an example for this video of a Magpul angled foregrip on this UTG Pro rail here. This used to be on my very first AR at one point. I've come a long way. But you can put an angled foregrip on an AR pistol instead of a vertical foregrip. For some reason, that logic makes sense that angled doesn't mean you're going to use two hands on it. I don't understand it personally. But it is the rules that we live with. And we'll do a video eventually about why we have these rules and kind of the history of the NFA, because it's really dumb. They were going to try to outlaw pistols in the NFA. That didn't fly. The only reason short-barreled rifles were also outlawed was so that people didn't have a loophole to make a rifle into a handgun. They took pistols off it, but they kept SBRs on. Absolutely stupid. But we still have these rules today. So you can have a shorter barrel length than 16 inches with a brace and with an angled foregrip, not a stock, and a vertical foregrip. Well, if you do that, you do get many of the benefits of having an SBR without having to go through the NFA. The benefits being that you have a shorter, more maneuverable gun. This, compared to this 16-inch rifle, is more lightweight and it's smaller. I mean, I can move this around in front of the camera without knocking over my tripod. That was hard to do with that one. I really like short barrels. They, home defense. They'd be a lot easier to run around your house with if you needed to. As a truck gun, whatever. you want to do with a shorter gun. I like shorter guns for most things except for long-range shooting. They're just nice and easy to deal with. Why would you want a pistol versus going the SBR route? Well, a couple reasons. For one, many people just don't want to pay $200 for a tax stamp just to be able to put this piece of plastic versus this piece of plastic on the back of their gun. Now, personally, I like a stock a lot better than a pistol brace, but to a lot of people, that doesn't really matter. And honestly, for myself, for a long time, that's how I thought. And I had a bunch of guns with pistol braces for quite a long time. There are other benefits to it. So besides just not paying for the tax stamp, you also don't get put on, the ATF's NFA list. A lot of people want the government out of their business and not knowing what firearms they have. And that I totally understand. Now, technically, they're not supposed to have a searchable database of like 4473s, but we all know that they probably do. In fact, it's been proven that they do. So even if you don't have NFA items, you might already be on a government list just by owning guns. And if you have suppressors, then you have NFA items already anyway. We'll get into that with SBRs in a minute. The other benefit of having a pistol versus any kind of rifle, short-barreled or otherwise, is that legally it's the same thing as a handgun, meaning that you could carry it concealed with a round chambered, depending where you live. Some states you can't do that with a rifle, but you can have a round chambered and a concealed pistol in your vehicle. And an AR pistol, technically, legally, is the same thing as a handgun. And so there are those benefits as well. Besides that, one thing that people bring up all the time when it comes to SBRs is the fact that you cannot travel intrastate with them without notifying the ATF first. Now, you're not really asking the ATF permission, but there is a form that you have to fill out if you have a short-barreled rifle and send into the ATF and get approval before you can take your SBR across state lines to another state. You don't have to do that with a standard rifle or an AR pistol, which is another benefit of having a pistol if you want something short, but you don't want to go the NFA route. So with all of the legal benefits of an AR pistol, why would one choose to make their gun into a SBR, a short-barreled rifle? Because as you can see, I've done that with all of my AR pistols. SBR, SBR, SBR at this point, SBR. All of these were AR pistols at one point with pistol braces on them and either angled foregrips or just like finger stops or hand stops. Now I've got vertical foregrips on a lot of these. Yes, I know the BCM vertical foregrip is 89 degrees, not 90. You can debate that in the comments if this is a vertical foregrip or not. It doesn't matter to me because mine are SBR'd. I can run real stocks on them. Now, why would I choose to do that? Well, for one, once you have one SBR, you get a little spoiled. This stock feels just a lot better than this brace does. That's a big one to me, and I like to have a vertical foregrip. It feels a lot better than an angled foregrip to me. I don't have angled grips on any of my guns anymore. I mean, okay, very slight angle, but I don't have angled grips like this. These didn't really seem to serve much of a purpose to me. Now, you may love them, and to each their own. I like a vertical foregrip. I like a real stock. To me, it's worth the $200 to be able to set my gun up the way that I want it to be. Especially once I started getting suppressors. Those are NFA items just like SBRs are. And so with the suppressor, you're going to go through the same exact process, and you're going to be put on that government list of gun owners, NFA item owners. Once I'd already had my first suppressor, at that point, I didn't care anymore about getting SBRs or not. There was no real reason for me to run pistol braces anymore after that because I already had NFA items. The only reason at that point was to save $200 and then the dreaded interstate travel clause. Well, you know what? In all of the years that I've owned SBRs, I haven't ran into a single situation where I've needed to travel across state lines with them. So that has not come up for me yet. But I also live in southern Idaho. Most of my family lives in northern Idaho. And the states that the rest of my family and friends live in, to the west of me, well, they wouldn't like any of this stuff. Do what you want as a free citizen. But if I do want to travel, to another state, I'll just fill out that form. It's good for a year and I can do that. Now, I'm also in Idaho, so certain other laws don't apply to me like they may to you. Idaho is a very free state when it comes to guns. Now, I do still have to follow federal firearms laws. And so because of that, I do have to pay for a tax stamp to be able to set these things up as SBRs. But to me, it's worth it, especially when it came to the Mark 18 there. It just didn't look right with the pistol brace on it. With the stock, it looks like a Mark 18. And honestly, with my little 300 blackout here, I just love having my little 2-stamp guns. To me, an SBR gets you, well, most of the benefits of a rifle and a pistol. I get to set it up the way I want with a real stock and a vertical foregrip, but I have something nice and short and compact at the same time, less than 16-inch barrel. Now that really comes into play if you do use suppressors. And at this point, I like to use suppressors on all of my ARs anytime I shoot them. I was out shooting earlier today with the 16-inch. I put that suppressor, the Polonium K, on the end. I did get a K can for my 5.56 guns for a reason. You can only get 5.56 so quiet anyway. And when it comes to the 16-inch and the 14.5-inch, I didn't want to make those guns too long by adding a suppressor. The nice thing about something like the 10.3, the 11.5, or especially the 8.2-inch 300 blackout here, is that when you add a suppressor, you still don't have a very long gun. And so to me, that's one of the benefits of having an SBR or a pistol, admittedly, but it is nice to have a shorter barrel when running suppressed, in my opinion, because then you just don't have some ridiculously long musket of a rifle. And I like that. Now, if I am trying to shoot bigger, longer distances, I will choose a longer barrel length. And that is one of the other cons of AR pistols or SBRs. Now, not really with 300 blackout, not really with 9mm, but with 5.56. This 10.3-inch right here, I'm not going to get as much velocity on my round as I am with the 16-inch or even the 14.5-inch. Same with the 11.5 here. As your barrel length gets shorter, your velocity gets less. And depending what kind of distances you're shooting, well, then the terminal ballistics are not going to be the same as they would be out of a longer barrel. And so that is something to consider as well. If you are shooting longer distances and you want your round to be effective on target at those very long distances, then maybe a short barrel isn't for you. If like me, you want to have multiple ARs, which I think, what's the best one for you? Rifle, pistol, SBR, maybe all of them. That's kind of where I'm at. Then I've got longer guns for shooting longer distances, shorter guns for shorter distances, really short distances, whatever it may be, and you set up your optics accordingly. I've got a big scope on this one, magnified on that one, non-magnified on that one, non-magnified on this one, for those different distances that I may be shooting. And that's kind of the great thing about barrel length. I think barrel length and optic choice do go hand in hand in a lot of ways. But let me know down in the comments, what do you prefer? A full 16-inch or more rifle, an AR pistol with a shorter barrel, or do you go full NFA and do SBRs? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear from you guys. I read every comment. I try to answer as many of them as I can, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.